And here we are again, Hornets. This time with our ready workbook for lesson 8, part 2 for summarizing literary text. I need you to get your workbook out and open to page 70. And we'll go ahead and get started. At any point you need to pause the video so you can catch up, please do so. So the very first thing we're going to do, if you flip back and look at our last lesson on page, there we go, page 69, we are still summarizing literary text. So we're going to rewrite our lesson title at the top of our page. I hope. Some are rising. Yep. We'll spell it right this time. Summarizing literary text. Now, keep in mind that once again, when we summarize something, I'm going to write under here that a summary is brief retelling. And I'm reminding y'all of this because sometimes we get a little wordy, myself included. And one of the things we want to make sure we do is we keep it what I like to call soap. We want to keep it clean. We want it to be short, objective, and remember, objective means we're keeping our opinion out of it. We want it to be accurate, which means it's going to go in chronological order. And then we want it to be paraphrased because we want it in as much of your own words as possible. All right. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to read our instructions, and it tells me to read the first 3 paragraphs of an Algonquin legend. Well, first off, I got 2 important things. I got a couple of things. It says the first 3 paragraphs, which lets me know there's probably going to be more. Then it tells me we're going to be reading an Algonquin legend. Well, guys, this right here is a Native American tribe, okay? And when we say the word legend, oh, look over here. It even kind of gives us our genre. All right, when we say the word legend, we're talking about that piece of folklore, right, that normally has a hero, but it's a human hero who's brave and ethical and honest. And it's normally told like it could have really happened. Like we want it to be, we tell it like it used to be true. And I'm going to put a question mark next to true because we can't prove it, but we tell the story like it is true. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to box our title. And our title is Gloosclap and the Wesses. And if you can't pronounce these things out loud, you can call him Glue and W. Don't get tripped up by names because nobody can read your mind and hear inside your head, okay? So then after we read our title, because when we read our title, we don't know what those words mean. So we can't even figure out our connotation, if it's a positive, negative, or neutral. But we can number our paragraphs, and we have paragraph 1, 2, and 3. And remember, it says that these are the first 3 paragraphs. So hopefully, and down here at the bottom, you notice it says continue, which is going to let me know that eventually I'm going to have to move on. So one of the things that we want to make sure we do while we read is that we want to circle our characters, we want to underline our settings, and we want to try to put stars by our major events that could possibly cause conflict, right? So here we go. And so it was that Gloosclap, the mightiest and most fearsome of all the Algonquian warriors, had traversed through the lands, defeating all his enemies. After many months, he returned to his village, where the people bowed their heads respectfully. Upon arriving at his wigwam home, however, he glimpsed an odd creature sitting on the floor, sucking a piece of maple sugar candy, troubling no one. Gloosclap asked his wife what the creature was, to which she responded that it was the Wessis, a fierce being who was undefeated and would remain so until the end of time. She warned her husband that if he meddled with the Wessis, Gloosclap would be plagued with suffering. Gloosclap was incensed that an enemy had infiltrated his home. He challenged the small creature to a test of strength, but the Wessis ignored him. Outraged, he ordered the Wessis to crawl to him and acknowledge him as its master, but the creature only laughed. So let's go back and make sure we can identify our characters and our setting and our major events. So our first major character we get is Gloosclap. And he is even described as the mightiest and most fearsome of all of the warriors. And we get that our setting is that he's returning to his village. That's also a major event, guys, that he's coming home. So we also, well, that's our setting again, that he's actually back at his home, at his wigwam home, which is another way of, as much as I hate saying it, what we used to call when I was in school a teepee. So the next thing that we have that he does is he glimpses an odd creature sitting on the floor, and he asks his wife. So that odd creature is going to be another character. His wife is going to be another character. And she tells him that this odd creature is called the Wessis. And it's a fierce being who is undefeated, right? So our next major thing is that she warns her husband not to meddle with him because he'll just cause suffering. So then in paragraph 3, we get that Gloosclap was incensed. Wait a minute, Miss Murray. What does incensed mean? Well, let's look at some context, okay? He's incensed. He's got an enemy in his home. It's infiltrated. And even later, we go on to say that he is even outraged. So all of those context clues help me load and let me know that incensed means he is angry. He is furious. All right. So, and just keep in mind some antonyms for that are happy or pleased. But our actual word, some synonyms, is anger and furious. He is halt out, guys. So our next big event is that he challenges this small creature to a test of strength, in which the creature, he only laughs. Changed it. The creature only laughs. Right? He is not amused by Gloosclap. So we have now labeled our characters, because down here, my next thing asks me, what's the best way to summarize this part of the legend? Well, we've got our characters. We've circled all 3 of them. We have our setting, which we underlined, and we put stars by our major events. Now, we haven't set our theme yet. Okay. So think about the fact that our theme is that you have this little bitty creature that is winning over this mighty warrior. So just keep in mind thinking about how that theme is going to build by the time we get to the end of our story. So other things we want to say, our next part of this is that summaries should be objective. Okay, so that means that there's no opinions or judgments. So I'm going to read this summary, and as we read it, I need you to make sure you're crossing out those opinion and those judgment words. Okay? So, Gloosclap is an awesome, I always say this wrong. Gloosclap is an awesome Algonquin warrior who comes home to his village after defeating his enemies. I think it's funny how he finds the Wessis sitting on the floor and thinks it's another enemy. He foolishly challenges and orders the Wessis around, but the little creature won't obey him. So take a second, pause the video if you need to, and cross out the words that make this opinion or judgment. I'm going to assume right now you've crossed out your stuff. So hopefully you realize that awesome we should cross that out. It's a judgment word. Okay. Because one person's awesome is somebody else's horrible. So we can't say that. We also don't want to say, I think it's funny. How? I know you think it because guess who's doing the writing? You are. So is there any reason to say the words I think? Nope, because if you couldn't think it, you couldn't write it. It also tells your reader that you're giving an opinion, which we don't want. So we want to make sure we don't say that. Another one we've crossed out is he foolishly. That is a judgment word. It's an opinion word. We don't want to say foolishly. We just want to simply say he challenges and orders the Oasis around. Now, if the text would have said he foolishly challenged the Oasis, then we could have put that in our summary. But since the text didn't say he was doing something silly, we can't say that he did something silly, right? So, oh, look down here. We've already done that. We already did this one. We crossed out awesome. We crossed out, I think it's funny because it's a judgment. And we crossed out foolishly once again because it's another opinion. So in our last step down here says with a partner, which right now we might not be able to do, discuss other important event that should be added to the summary to make it more complete. All right, so is there anything that you can think of that would make a really good thing that we need to include? Think about all the stuff we starred that's not in there that we might want to put in an actual summary. If it were me, there's something I would put right here between sentence 2 and sentence 3. So I'm going to add that. Gloosclap is angered by the Oasis's disobedience. Let's see if I can spell disobedience right. I'd want to add that just because it makes it a little bit more to let us why he would challenge the Oasis and why he won't obey him, that he's angry. I would just want to know that he's really that kind of, as I said earlier, hulked out. All right, so that is the end of part 2. So please stay tuned. Hornets, we will be starting part 3 in a little bit.